at Disney and all these stressful jobs with startups and other companies and organizations, I have found meditation and breath work and a lot of the new modern ancient modalities to be extremely helpful to you. So I wanted to help change up the curriculum here at General Assembly, because I know we're talking a lot about design typically here, or marketing in my case, or coding. But tonight we're going to be talking about helping to be unstuck, especially right now during COVID-19. So we have an illustrious panel of people joining us from California and even Oregon. And I want to introduce the first three people, and the only three people that we'll be talking to tonight. The first one is April Fender. She's a Reiki master teacher, an author, a sacred sound alchemist, quantum healer, and meditation instructor practicing in Santa Monica, California. She's the founder of Santa Monica Healing, which focuses on Reiki and quantum healing practices. She met through public classes at Unplugged Meditation, where I first have taken her class. And she helps with, has a ceremonial background in plant medicine and hosts workshops and retreats all over California. And her path began 15 years ago. And she's seen a lot of evolutions in her life, professionally and personally since that. Peter Opperman is our other panelist as well. He's from Germany. He's an engineer turned esteemed meditation teacher. And he's the founder of Future Self Method and life coaching. He's fluent in German and English, so we may have to keep him honest later and have him speak some German to us. And he teaches with clients around the world. He's been an entrepreneur for 20 years. And after leaving a promising engineering career in Germany, he started a Japanese furniture company in Berlin and New York with the intention of bringing mindfulness to the workplace. Later, he founded a Karma Builders company, which was a social enterprise in the Bronx, New York, teaching and training ex-prisoners in mindfulness and job skills. I've also taken his class as well. I took a brain massage course that he has given me at a meditation studio in Los Angeles as well. And John Paul Crimmy, originally from Boston, he moved to Los Angeles in his early 20s and became one of the most sought after celebrity trainers and sober coaches in the country. Unexpectedly, he found himself in a breathwork class and had a massive transformation that first time. He resides in Bend, Oregon with his wife and two children and returns to LA for classes and workshops. And he has an East Coast, no nonsense approach, taking the new agey part out of breathwork for both companies and corporations that are filling his calendar. Overall, he's been on Good Old Morning America, featured in the Huffington Post, the Hollywood Reporter. And he believes that there's no one who can benefit from the practice. And he's worked with Olympians, Oscar and Emmy Award winners to prove it. I have taken a lot of breathwork classes and a big proponent of it as well. So tonight we'll be going in very deep to the topics here. And Mercy wrote in the comments that she loves Unplugged. So glad to hear that. That's a meditation studio in Los Angeles. So I wanted to start off talking to April first. April, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So first question is, how do you describe what you do to my mom? My mom's skeptical. She's 75 years old. She thinks it's weird that I meditate. So how do you translate what you do to someone like my mother?
That's really sweet. I feel like we should invite her over for dinner to have a really nice long experience with that. My mom is also still trying to figure out what I do. It's really adorable. And what I let her know is that, so whereas I understand the philosophy and taking the woo-woo out of meditating and other modalities, however, I am actually just going to go put it right back in and like triple the woo if possible, because we're moving into a different time right now energetically, where we're opening up on so many different levels of consciousness, and it's our responsibility to each other and the planet to stay open and keep evolving so we can grow and build in that way. What I would say to people who have trouble understanding energy work, because I'm in the path of energy medicine, is that it's basically like, okay, Reiki, we can consider this maybe like acupuncture without the needles. Okay, so we're receiving upgrades energetically. And this is just like, when we reboot our computer and we install amazing software and programs, we are giving ourselves that boost and we're allowing ourselves to reset. So I'm doing a lot of quantum work these days, which I know, Ryan, we haven't even talked about. Um, that one's a little harder to describe to like our parents' generation, but I'm not going to exclude them. I will say we are working with the mechanics of our biofield, and we're collapsing time frames that don't belong there anymore. So that's a really simplified way of describing it. I hope that makes sense.
Well, has anyone here in the comments? I'm curious. Have you done Reiki or sound healing or breath work or meditation? I'm curious, like if we have a lot of people curious about the meditation, what type of meditations have you done as well for those that have experience like Trish? Because my next question for you is, April, I've taken a sacred sound healing bath from you, where you've played this flower of life gong that's about as big as my wall, and you have to like multiple people have to carry it out of your car. You have this massive gong, and you have these great instruments. And so, what is sacred sound healing?
So, sacred sound healing is another facet of what I do. I do believe that a lot of healing, especially for energetics, are moving into vibration related therapies, and that definitely includes sound healing. So, sound healing allows your energy fields to reset. So, I guess just type in yes if you've heard of your chakra system before. So I've written a couple books on them, and I'm not going to self-plug right now because I don't need to. But if you are curious, I'm just going to point you there because I deal a lot with chakras and every day with people. And when you go to a sound bath, you are listening and receiving vibrations that are basically essentially tuning you up. And so it's kind of just like tuning an instrument. So we are receiving the healing that we need through the sound. And the reason we say alchemy is because we're transforming something. So we're transforming your energy into, well, we call it transmuting, okay, into something that is different. So you're going to leave feeling different. And if you haven't been to a sound bath, I know they're all over the country and they're getting really popular. There's amazing ones online too. And I mean, of course, Unplug hosts them because we've worked there, so I kind of like have to say that. But in addition, like let's say you're having a day, okay? Because today, I don't know if anyone else had a day today, but I had a day where I got a little flatline. So you can even put the music on in the background, let's say 528 hertz, and you're going to receive a beautiful heart opening. So you're going to be transmuting that energy in your
And
field.
what instruments are you playing?
So I play the crystal bowls, I play gong, I play sacred instruments that like ocean drum, chimes, crystal harp. I have all kind of instruments that you
And how
haven't.
do you become a sound healer? Like, do you have a musical background?
So there is a portion of sound that is music theory, excuse me, that you do learn about when you're training, but I'm not like so instrumental and like I don't play guitar or anything like that. I'm more of a percussionist, but I did play piano. And well, yeah, I mean, you can train to become a sound healer. They have training programs.
Okay. And then what for people that are wanting to learn a little bit more about like, getting through COVID-19, the stresses, people working from home, what are some things that you're doing in your own practice that you think have helped you?
So I'm all about energy. If you like haven't noticed, my whole thing is I'm like the energy medicine person here. So we're all energy medicine people, but my particular medicine is uh, learning to notice when I'm leaking my energy. So that's like kind of step one, right? We want to prioritize that because a lot of times we'll just be really frustrated. Our tank is on empty, and we're finding ourselves in this moment. And there are plenty of ways that the meditation world and the breathwork world, which I can't wait to hear from our other co-hosts, will teach you how to drop into that. But for me, at the end of the day, it's my energy. So I want to pause, reflect, and then respond in a conscious way to my own needs. So maybe throughout the day, I will do perhaps a check-in in the morning, and I'll see how my heart space is doing. And if it needs something, I need to take a moment and listen because it's communicating on an etheric level with me, which means this is a moment for you just to drop into you and notice what it is that you need. Once you've identified that, then you can either schedule it for later, right? Because we don't really have time all the time
When
to
you
just.
check in, are you like, are you meditating, or are you, what do you?
Sometimes I'll meditate, but as an instructor and with a full client schedule, with everybody on this call is probably either in like creative or tech kind of field that they're busy all day. So you may not have time to do a 45-minute meditation, but what I like to do is do like a 5-minute check-in, which doesn't necessarily include me being silent and alming to myself, which you will also find me doing. But this is more of like me dropping into what I need in that moment and then scheduling it for later or letting myself take a break when I need to. Like I took an adult nap today and I felt spoiled. Like felt really good for me. Also, I've been really conscious about what I've been assigning meaning to. So let's say something is in my field that is from the collective, okay? But I can't tell if it's me or if it's someone else that is like really got me like really bothered in the moment. So that would be considered a trigger. So if you haven't done like a lot of like self-work before on triggers, then this is something that's small that you can just start paying attention to is like A, what is triggering you, and B, what meaning am I assigning to it,
Right.
and how much of my energy am I going to devote to this right now, because we long story short, we have choices that we can make throughout the day, and sometimes we forget their choices because they're really simple. And what I feel like would be really beneficial is if we just made choices that were more responsible and conscious, that said, like, you know what, I'm not going to give my energy to that right now because that would leave me at a deficit.
The
Like
only
that.
person we can control is ourselves. We can't control anyone else. So, well, we got
Although
some
we
comments,
would
but
like to, but that's
I wish I could actually. We have some comments. We have people that have taken your class.
that's so sweet.
Evelina says, I'm a big follower. April sound baths are the best. So healing. Peter's future self meditation is amazing. Trish says that she does Reiki, sound bath with bowls and gongs, integration. Yes, meditation, hashtag woo woo. So they're already picking up on your woo woo, April.
Well, I saw the Trish like the triple woo woo woo. So don't forget that. I actually had I used to work a long time ago. This not to get off topic, but I did have a corporate job once in my life. Okay, I was terrible at it, but I did. And they told me to bring it down. One morning, somebody was like, "Can you just take it down to one woo today, April?" And then
Oh,
I
that's
was
awesome.
like, "I'm gonna have to quit."
Yeah. Well, that's good. All right. Well, thank you. We're going to jump into Peter now. We're going to open this up later for everyone to talk and ask April questions because I think people want to know about this adult nap that you took today also as well.
It was very
Um,
satisfying.
um, and then, so actually, we're going to go into Peter, who we have someone here. Mercy says she's taken Peter's class quite a bit, and also sound healing at the Integratron, the best. So it's awesome. We have people here, Peter. So Peter, yeah, your background, you were not a meditation leader up until what, like 15 years ago? When did you make the transition into this field?
7 years ago when I moved to LA.
Okay. And what was
Yeah,
that moment where you felt?
so basically, I started out as an engineer back in Berlin, back in the days before there was even like when there was a Berlin Wall. And I started engineering with the intention, because that's all I knew at the time. I wanted to help people. I wanted to somehow be helpful to this world. And because I was good at taking my motorcycle apart and putting it back together, and it actually was working, I thought, okay, technology is the future. I want to go into technology to help people to invent better machines, better technology in service of humanity, of the big problems that we face. And then once I started engineering, mechanical engineering, actually, I was getting more and more frustrated and disappointed because the visionary inside of me that really wanted to make a difference in the world wasn't satisfied. It was all old knowledge, very mechanical, obviously. And then I discovered meditation through one of my yoga teachers. And when I sat in my first meditation session, it felt like coming home. Finally, someone was speaking my language. Someone could actually articulate concepts and thoughts that I had ruminated about for years. And then basically pretty soon after I got my degree, and then I decided, so what to do with my life? And meditation was becoming more and more important, that I decided to somehow figure out how to monetize mindfulness. How can you make money by being mindful? And since I was gifted with two practical hands, I knew how to build things with my hands, build furniture. So I started my own furniture business in the outskirts of East Berlin as a way to basically work with my hands in a very mindful, controlled environment. And nowadays you would probably brand it as mindful furniture. Back then, nobody knew about mindfulness or vipassana or those things. But it became, because maybe all the good energies or whatnot, became actually a successful company, which allowed me to expand to the US market. I got married to a lovely US woman. Marriage didn't last long, but it brought me here, and forever grateful. But deep down, I always knew building furniture and building Japanese furniture was beautiful, beautifying spaces, bringing peace into in people's lives. You know, literally, the products that I made were pacifying people's interior spaces. I was good at creating order where there was chaos, but I always knew this is not enough. And I always knew somewhere I wanted to share these fruits that was so transformative for myself with others. And I also have deep limiting beliefs about not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough, not knowing shit, that everything is already written about. I mean, I studied with amazing teachers. Who am I to have something new, something original to contribute? This was the voice of my ego, my limiting beliefs, telling me, this is Peter, and the biggest one, there's no money in meditation. You could maybe put on robes and become a monk, which I actually tried when I was in Burma many years ago, and it was definitely glad I did it, but it was a dead end for me.
Wait, so
And
then how do you, I'm curious now, how do you, what kind of advice do you give to people that ask to get into the meditation work about making money? What do you say to them? Like, how do you make money? It,
yeah, I think it's the wrong approach. If anybody wants to go into meditation for to make money, it's putting the horse in front of the cart.
mm,
Meditation is really about letting go, in my opinion at least, really letting go of our conventional understanding of how things work. And our conventional understanding is, okay, I have a need and I find a niche and I get it. I somehow pull things towards me from a place of lack. So if I want to make a career, let me monetize and pull money towards me. From a deeper point of view, and allow me maybe to go a little bit deeper in this audience, we have a little bit of time. The deeper understanding of manifestation is that first you want to give something away. The first law of karma says, whatever you want for yourself, give it away to someone else who needs it. That may sound very do-gooder, altruistic, but
right.
there's actually a science behind it. And we could go into quantum physics to step by step unpack this and understand we are living in a completely interconnected universe where whatever I do affects everything else and vice versa. So if I want to create an effect in this deeply interconnected universe from a place of fullness, I'm sharing my fullness, my gifts with others, and as a result, as a feedback wave, I receive an amplified result of that. Like the ancient tradition in Judaism of tithing, you always give, you donate, and you may think it's altruistic, and in a way it is, and it should be, ultimately, but it's actually, the Dalai Lama speaks about enlightened self-interest. So you want to give in order to receive. It's a interconnected dynamic. So anyone who's interested to monetize mindfulness, teach other people to be mindful first, be an example, make this world a more beautiful, a more mindful place out of your own heart, out of your own conviction. And then, like Joseph Campbell says, if you follow your bliss and passion, the universe opens up doors where there were formerly walls. So you can trust. It takes that leap of faith into the unknown to return to this kind of childlike, innocent state that April is such a beautiful embodiment of. And if you embody that trust in the universe, life changes around in a dramatic way. And I feel we need more of that in these days. That's why meditation, all these things are so important and are so en vogue, because the old way of operating, of fixing problems, it's just not going to work anymore.
Yeah,
So,
totally. That's great. I actually wrote enlightened self-interest in the comment. I think that's a beautiful term. I mean, it's not as great as the adult nap comment we had earlier from April, but Trish is giving you snaps in there for that comment. What? So we talked about the brain massage that you teach, and then also someone mentioned, I think it maybe was Trish in the comments, that she's been. Can you explain exactly what you're doing with that meditation, what it is to people that aren't familiar?
sure. So, given my background in science and I'm a very empirical person, I love big concepts, but I always want to test them. Do they work? I want to run them by my own internal BS meter and think, is this stuff that actually resonates with me from an experiential point of view? So, one powerful example of that, and April also spoke about that, about the power of sound waves. And there's one particular type of audio technology called binaural beats. Probably some of you may have heard about it. Fascinating technology, how it's working to trick the brain into a virtual frequency. And you can literally calibrate that virtual frequency to match the sweet spot in meditation called the theta brainwave states, about 8 to 10 hertz. When the brain oscillates in that frequency, you're awake, you're not in REM sleep, you're awake, and you are connected to your unconscious mind. So you're kind of in a way lucid dreaming. You're wakeful dreaming. It's an amazing state to get into.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Right? You know that, Ryan. So and many of you, I'm sure. So with brain massage, it's a way to work with these binaural beats. So after 5-10 minutes, you feel, oh my goodness, I'm starting to kind of almost like get into a hypnotic state. And then through a specific guided meditation that involves deep breathing, that shifts the nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system, overriding, getting us into a state of coherence, brain-heart coherence kicks in. You could hook up people onto an EEG meter and see how it affects the whole body,
And so
mind.
in your class, we're wearing headphones and we're,
Correct. The headphones are important because for the binaural beats, you need a dedicated stereo signal where the left and the right is slightly different. And also it creates like little bubble of light. You're kind of in your own personal space. And it gives me as a guide the opportunity to whisper into people's minds. And apparently it seems to work. They haven't kicked me out of Unplug yet. And so with brain massage, basically it helps the brain to power down, to kind of literally wash out old stress, limiting beliefs, kind of to wash the slate clean. And once the brain is kind of in a neutral state, then really the fun happens. Then I usually guide people on some kind of a guided journey. I'm well known for the future self journey, where we transcend linear time and space. If this is a new concept, get used to it. Science is waking up that time is actually non-linear by nature. So our sense of linear time is a helpful but limited construct. So the true nature of time is actually where past, present, and future all coexist in a multi-dimensional matrix. And through intention, in that brain massaged state, in this quantum state that both Paul and April are also experts to guide you into, there are different portals to enter into this state. There's nothing that nobody can own that. That's who we are. It's just different people have different pathways to enter this sweet spot. And then once you're in the sweet spot, you can literally go anywhere and go on deep healing journeys. If you have trauma, if you have old memories you can get rid of, it's a very fast way to undo a lot of old conditioning that otherwise may take years of therapy. It's also a powerful manifestation tool. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're an artist, if you are just a creative person, that's where the best ideas come from. They don't come from our thinking mind, which just repeats what it already knows. If you're good at if you just want to kind of repeat what other people are doing, that may work from a cerebral way. But if you are actually a genius, if there's a symphony inside of you, the next killer app, something amazing you actually can charge top dollars for also, you need to have your resources more open from the quantum field. That's where the best ideas come from, me at least.
That's awesome. I want to dive more into the theta states later and the different brainwave states we can get into. I remember I took the future self meditation that you gave, and I actually went back in time, and I was like, oh, maybe I already am my future self. Like, what am I so worried about here? And so I went back to like a week before where I was like doing something that my future self wanted to do. So it's incredibly powerful. Awesome. Well, thank you. Cool. John Paul batting third here in the lineup, coming in from Bend, Oregon. So John Paul, you mentioned in your bio, and it's on your website, and I introduced you earlier, talking about how you wound up in a breathwork class. You ended up there, and then things changed for you.
Yeah.
How did you wind up in that class?
Well, I had met Tony Robbins on a chance meeting, and it was pretty powerful. And he invited me to his seminar, to UPW, Unleash the Power Within. And it was life-changing. And I was wide open after that. I was wide open to different possibilities and different things. And two people who didn't know each other said to me, you need to go do breath work. And I'd never even heard of breath work at the time. I was like, what's breath work, right? And so I went to a studio that isn't there anymore. And I walked in, and it was like, there was 5 people in the room. The teacher was on like a sheepskin rug, and there was crystals and oils. Sorry, April. But I was like, this is what fresh hell have I walked into right now? Like, this is like a level of awfulness that I didn't know was available to me in my lifetime, because I'm just not into that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. If you're woo-woo, great for you. I'm happy for you, but it's not my thing. I'm from Boston. And at the time I was just like, okay, I'm open, but whatever. And so I laid down, and the music, the music was all woo woo, and I hated it all. I hated all of it except the breath work. And the truth of the matter is that the experience, the breathing was undeniable, right? And something happened to me in that breathing session that cracked me open, and I released, I don't know, 30 years of shit, 30 years of trauma, 30 years of horrible, just things that had happened to me in one session. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was enough. Peter touched on this. It was like in one session, it was the first time in my life I ever felt like I was enough. I didn't need to be funnier or richer or thinner or hairier. I didn't need to be anything more. I was enough for the first time in my life. And I came home, and my wife was like, wow, you look like a different person. It was visible, wow. And I was like, wow, I couldn't explain it. And I started doing it every day and on my own, and having these incredible experiences and releasing all this stuff. And occasionally I would go to a class, and it would be, I didn't love the classes, and I went through trainings and different things, and I'm just being honest. Right. And at some point in that breathing, I said to myself, I had this is a woo-woo term. I said I had one of the downloads, right? Which is just a message from the universe or whatever. April, I think that's me that's triggering you, in case you were wondering. I had a download that if somebody taught this in a way that wasn't new agey, that wasn't woo-woo, that wasn't talking about the moons and the spirits and the planets and all this stuff, that they would have a line out the door and 300 people in the room. And I was right, because the truth is that, we identify with people who talk the way we do. And I didn't want to do breath work for 8 other breath work teachers. I wanted to do breath work for 200 people and firefighters and police guys and gang members and all these people who would never do breath work. And that's what's happened, you know, as a result of, you know, doing it, teaching it in the way that I teach it. And so if, you know, you were to ask me, like, how would you explain it to your mom? I would say, you know, the most common statement after a class is, holy shit, that felt like 20 years of therapy without having to say a word. And it's different for everybody, and it's different every time you do it. So it's really hard to explain. But the thing that I love the most is, no matter how cynical you are and no matter how doubtful you are, it will get you. Like, it's undeniable. Like, I love when I get some guy or some person in there who's like, I can't believe my wife dragged me to this shit and I got to do this. And then they lay down and they breathe and they come up to me afterwards and I can tell they've been crying for 20 minutes. And they're like, that just changed my life. And that's why I do it. You know, I think Peter really touched on it where he said, you know, for me, it can't be about the money. It's got to be about helping other people. And then the money is a byproduct of helping other people. Unfortunately, I have this belief with breath work that if you don't pay attention. And the reason I have that belief is because I taught at the studio for a couple years, and there was always a couple people in the room who weren't doing it, you know, and I would go over and I would be like, did they come on a free pass? And it was always, yes, they came in a free pass, because breath work is hard. It takes work. You know, certain other modalities like Reiki or sound bath or different things like that, meditation even, you can lay there and kind of relax and just take it in. Whereas breath work, you really have to work. You have to work hard at it. And if you're not invested in some way, usually money, if you don't have some kind of investment, you're going to quit after 5 to 10 minutes. You'll be like, yeah, breath work, it's hard. It's not for me. It's kind of weird. I don't like it. And so I have a feeling where if you don't pay attention. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, well, like, you're getting someone, Trish laughs in the comments over here. Francisco says, I'm enjoying this. Ha ha, I can relate. I'm trying to be open too. Because I think that there's definitely people like myself, even, where I can't take my friends to necessarily like meditation studios because they're just turned off by certain parts of it. And so it sounds like you're extracting the parts of it that matter, maybe that are universal, and then using your personality to get it out there. And so what would you say, like, what technique do you, because there's so many different types of breath work. Like,
yeah.
So what's the style that you have learned?
That's a great question. So breath work is an umbrella term. It's like saying fitness, right? You can't say breath work. And like, I mean, if you said fitness, you'd be like, what do you do? Do you do CrossFit? Do you do Soul Cycle? Like, what's your thing, right? So there are different kinds of breath work. And, you know, I've had tons of people come to my class and like, oh, I've been doing breath work for 20 years. And they're talking about Kundalini yoga. And that's totally different, right? And so the style that I teach, the one technique that I focus on the most is, it's called a 2-part breath. And you breathing in through your mouth, down into your belly, down into your diaphragm, and then a second breath into your chest, and then you let it out. And you keep it connected, right? So in life, we take a breath in, we let it out, we pause, we talk, we rest, whatever. This, we don't rest. We keep it connected, kind of like a workout. And it's hard to believe, it's hard to understand when you hear someone talk about breath work, that you can't wrap your brain around something you've been doing your whole life unconsciously since you were born, how that would transform your life. How in one session or how in a couple classes is this going to clear out all my stress, all my trauma? How is this going to get rid of everything inside of me that this guy's trying to tell me that it will? You cannot wrap your brain around that. You just have to show up and do it and find out for yourself. Because the first thing I thought after my brain turned back on, because your brain will turn off during breath work. It's called transient hyperfrontality, the ego, right? The part of your brain that tells you you're not enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not funny enough, whatever. That turns off if you do it in a certain way, if you do it intensely enough. When the brain finally turned back on, I thought, my God, how has this been available to me my whole life? And I had no idea that it was there. Like, why didn't somebody show this to me when I was 14 years old and I was suicidal and miserable and depressed and all this kind of stuff? Like, why doesn't everybody know about this?
Yeah, totally. No, I felt the same way when I do breath work. I'm like you, I got addicted to it. I'm not teaching, but I do it like every night before I go to bed. And I have friends, and I do it with, like, you know, on my own or with a guided meditation. And I have friends that are telling me, they're like, restless during COVID, or they're, watching Black Lives Matter and they're upset about things that are going on in America and they're not sleeping well. And I've been sleeping like 7, 8 hours a night, and it just puts me to bed. And it's like, really, like, is there science behind this? Because I feel like it works, and it's just like you have to take a leap of faith that it's just going
Yeah.
to happen.
They're working on the science now. I mean, they're doing a study at Johns Hopkins with veterans with PTSD, and Wim Hof's got a bunch of stuff that they're doing, the research studies. My personal theory, which isn't science, just my personal theory, is that we have this stuff that gets trapped in our nervous system. And whether it's like built up over a lifetime, something happened to you on the playground when you were 4 years old, somebody pushed you off the slide or something like that, or it's just, the stress of watching what's going on right now in the world. I mean, that's really stressful. And I don't know when my business is going to start back up again. I've had to cancel 3 trainings. I'm probably going to cancel 3 more. I've had to cancel my retreat. I mean, I can start to work myself up here if I just start even talk about it. When are people going to fucking breathe in the room together again? Probably never. I don't know. Like, let me just get on the train. Right. And so all that just starts to build up inside of me. And then it gets trapped within the system. It gets trapped within my nervous system, and I'm carrying that around. And so when I lay down and breathe, I start to release that out of my body. And it's just a way to release that out. And, I couldn't meditate to save my life. I meditate now every day. I love meditation. But for a guy like me, when I found breath work 8 years ago, I couldn't sit still. And it was like a workout. I was a personal trainer, and it was like, oh, it made sense to me. I'm going to lay down and I'm going to breathe this way, and it's going to be like a workout technique. And I used it like that. I approached it like that. And now the breath work has carved a pathway in my brain to get where I need to go, to know where I want to be when I meditate. Or, I have a float tank. I have a sensory deprivation tank in my house. I'm really lucky. And Peter was talking about the theta brainwave. So I've had that for about 5 years, and I can get right into that float tank and boom, just drop right into that state right away, because I'm so trained to do it. And it's amazing to just lay in there and release and let go.
And you also work with people on sobriety. How does the breath work help with that?
Well, I mean, addicts, alcoholics, any kind of addiction, it's always almost trauma based, right? It's all trauma. And so the breath work will help release the trauma. And, addicts love to feel altered. They love an altered state. I mean, my joke used to be like, I can tell who the addicts are in the room because they're trying to suck all the air out of the room. I'm looking around the room. This guy, as soon as they start to feel altered, they start working harder than everybody else in the room. And it does put you in a bit of an altered state. But the thing is it doesn't destroy your life. It makes your life better. So it's that kind of thing that like,
It's like a runner's high.
Yeah. In a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I've definitely, I mean, all of you, I was actually diagnosed with the childhood trauma. I don't really talk about this that much, but last year, and I have kids, I'm married, I have a career, and I was like, what the hell? Like, this is nuts. And so I've gone through like a boot camp the last 6 to 8 months, doing breath work, doing, Peter's brain massage, and doing, April's sound baths. And it's like revolutionized my life. And I can't even explain it to people. They're just like, first of all, they're like, how did you get diagnosed with this trauma? And I'm like, don't worry about it. Come from a long line of alcoholics. And it's just, it's powerful. I feel like, and I'd like to open this up to, Peter and April as well. And also the people asking questions in the chat. But like, where do you all, like, do you think we're having a moment right now? Like, just in general, because it just seems like the more mainstream these things become, the more healthy we will be. I don't know if it's that simple to say, but what do you think about that, April?
I just had to unmute myself. I
Yeah,
was
unmute, please.
answering Francisco in the chat that he was asking what is meant by an altered state. So I just wanted to answer him really quickly. And I believe that is a state that you're not normally in. John Paul, can you verify that for him a little bit?
Yeah, I'm not seeing the comments in the chat for some weird reason.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a state, anything other than your normal state. So if you had a couple drinks, you might be in an altered state. If you smoke some weed, you would be in an altered state. If you did an intense breathing class, you're in a bit of an altered state. Anything other than your normal waking state.
Okay, cool. Yeah, April. So John, I sent you a message to see if you could get it on your
I
chat.
got that. Okay.
Okay.
All right, now I'm seeing it. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so April, do you think we're having like a moment right now? You mentioned something earlier with like energy, but just where like
Yeah, I know we're having a moment, and we are okay. So I'm going to put this as gently as possible. We're moving into the divine feminine, which is a time where we're going to be very confronted if we're divine masculine, like very confronted. And I would like to consider myself pretty pragmatic, although I'm a healer and I'm an energy worker. And when I see these things coming, the signals for me are like massive cataclysmic change for the collective. And it comes in waves, and it comes when we need it most. We are, in my opinion, we have like one shoe on still. We have one shoe off. Now, this isn't just in terms of COVID, which I don't even like to give energy to that word. But really, I do acknowledge what's going on. We are in a pandemic, and we still have a lot more to go through because we're in a transformational cycle. So with transformational cycles, it has to crumble before we can build a new foundation and rebuild and come back stronger. So
we're crumbling. That's a gentle way to put it.
yeah.
The fall of Rome is happening right now.
Yeah, and it's nothing to panic about. In fact, it's kind of something to celebrate if you're open to it in that way of just observing and without getting too pulled into the polarity that's going on right now. And we can just kind of notice where we're at on the spectrum, like what's changing inside of us that maybe has to die before we can be born anew, and before we can adopt new ways of being and new attitudes and new beliefs and things that will really, really benefit us moving forward in this new age. And I'm not a feminist either. I'm not like down with the patriarchy, burn it all, whatever. But like, it wouldn't be the worst thing to see some changes come around. So, and when I say feminism, it can go into a whole about that. But upholding divine feminine is something different because we all have that balance within us. We have the masculine, we have the feminine, and it's about balancing. And right now humanity is rebalancing. So of course we have stuff that's like all looking a little bit sloppy. we have our world has come undone, the wheels are off the bus, and that's okay. The wheels need to be tireless right now. The wheels are off the bus, and that's okay.
I agree. Yeah, so Peter, have you noticed anything, like obviously you're not teaching in the rooms with people anymore, you're doing virtual work. How are you seeing this play out just in your viewpoint with the work you do and the work we all need to do together to kind of, be unstuck and, have more of a happy mind to bring to the world?
Mm. Yeah, I think April said it beautiful that something old has to die for the new to emerge. And I think that's, for me, is a map that resonates, that I think we are all aware who are news consuming adults that the world as we know it somehow has a big expiration date stamped on its forehead, whether it's climate change, our economy, social justice, income imbalances, just the way how we live is not sustainable, and it's not the kind of world that we want to pass on to our coming generations. I think anyone who has somewhat a critical thinking mind is well aware of that. Otherwise, you must be really in denial about reality. So for those of us, and I think all of us have this kind of nagging feeling, and we feel also helpless because we also feel married to this way of life. An alternative really hasn't shown up yet. And that is very unsettling. We know we are maybe staring into a climate catastrophe. The planet is warming, possibly. There are a lot of indicators. But what do we do about that? We feel helpless. And that sense of helpless and tremendous change brings up we talk about trauma, brings up memories. We feel triggered. And then that creates us getting more and more into tunnel vision, feeling more and more helpless, possibly, or then be victim to quick solutions. So this is a fascinating time, and if we take this on really as a warrior, and that includes men and women. Really, let's take this on. Let's not be a victim, but let's see how can we thrive. What are the new ideas that are emerging? What are my ideas? What are my big dreams? General Assembly is a melting pot of entrepreneurs who want to change, transform their life, educate themselves. I believe everybody who is on this call right now, you have something inside of you, a dream that you want to pursue, and something, and maybe now is the time to take out. During COVID, it's the big gift that we have actually more time at our hands, most of it at least, where you can invest into these new sprouts that are coming out everywhere in the world, that are coming out after each big firestorm. And that's the opportunity for these new ideas, for new ways of dealing with each other, for new ways to let go of old habits, to test them out. And that's the big opportunity and celebration. And that in-between phase, indeed, it's very messy. It's like in biology, the process of metamorphosis, like the process in biology that a caterpillar undergoes in order to become a butterfly. It's like two different paradigms. And the in-between state, the old caterpillar, turns into soup. All its cells start to get consumed into this soupy liquid, out of which the so-called imaginal cells start to grow. They're like little islands of hope, little islands where the new butterfly is already starting to grow in the soup of the old chaos. And then until there's a kind of a clicking point when there are enough imaginal cells in the old caterpillar corpus to click, and then within very quick time there's a new organism with colorful wings that then has no idea what flight means, but she just flaps her wings and takes off in delight for this new form that was not thinkable in the caterpillar state. So
I think we should all just go home after what you just said. Like, this is something I would read in a book. Like, I don't know what you're like. If you wrote a poetry book, sign me up for the pre-order. That was very eloquent. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just repeating what I studied.
No, all of what you just said though was
yeah,
profound.
Yeah, thank you. Well, again, I want to quote. I'm blanking right now, but there's a beautiful whole worldview, and I think biology is a good teacher to also give us hope that the process of death and rebirth is necessary for a constant evolution, to make space for something new. And our old system is rotten. I mean, at least I believe that it's rotten, and it's corrupted, and it's April spoke about the masculine feminine dynamics, very powerful lens to look through. I mean, all of these are maps we are talking about. None of this is real reality. We just have maps, different lenses to help us to make sense of a complex scenario that we can't fathom with our human minds. But the masculine feminine lens is a very important one right now. And I know for a fact for myself that the future is feminine. And with that, I mean that we need to be receptive. We need to cultivate feminine qualities where we can be open to receive new knowledge that is relevant, that we need as a collective, as a human family, to conquer, to find solutions. And then once we got inspired, once we opened ourselves up to receive, then we can take the gift of the masculine to take linear, very kind of milestone-oriented action, but that's in service of the wisdom of the feminine. Currently, we have it the opposite. It's a very masculine-driven, ruled world. It's all about ego. It's about me, myself, and I, my small little tribe I want to care for. Everyone else is second, and just more. And that is a typical masculine, unawakened way to just run from an old operating system.
That's awesome.
So that's why we need more feminine leaders.
I love it.
And
We got April here.
Men, for us men to really do the deep work, like what John Paul Creamy speaking about breath work, is a powerful tool to get this old ego stuff out of your system, out of our system, especially as men. We have a lot of work to do to be more humble, to be open, receptive, to listen within, because we have the answers inside, and then to take action. And I'm going to shut up.
No, it's great. Thank you. Anyone have any questions, by the way, in the chat? Feel free to chime in. Yeah, John Paul, like, do you think if more people did breath work, that we'd be a better society?
100%. I mean, there's zero doubt in my mind. I mean, for me, I'll just share my own personal experience because it's the best way for me to teach is that, I was really angry, like really, really angry and lashing out all around me. And the truth of the matter is that I'm very sensitive. I have what you would call a masculine core and a feminine emotional body, meaning I'm very sensitive with my emotions. And so when I teach my class, I let that out, and I'm able to sort of tap into that emotional side of me. And I get very emotional when I teach, and often cry in my classes while I'm teaching. And people hear that, and it gives them permission to cry. And it's kind of unexpected for a lot of people. And so when, like, as we raise boys, there's a great movie, it's called The Mask We Live In. And we've raised, we used to raise boys, don't be a wimp, or don't be this. I don't want to say, be strong, be a man, don't cry. And it's such a lie that we raise children with, especially boys, who don't cry. And so we have to give ourselves permission to cry and to be sensitive, right? And I found in my classes and in working with people that men really need permission to cry. And sometimes women too, they get that when they're young. And women need permission to yell. I do a big yell at the end of my class. And I used to use the gong. I still use the gong, but not now where it's not live. I'm not gonging in my house. But, and when I did it in private sessions, the women would really, like, if I didn't have the gong, they'd be like, they wouldn't feel comfortable yelling. And then when I had the gong, it would fill the room, and they'd be like, just let it out. And so we really need to give ourselves that permission. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in that kind of toxic masculinity environment in Boston, in South Boston. And so I know a lot about it. And it's, the breath work has just opened me in a way that I don't care. Like, I don't care what people think about me. I don't care if you think I'm whatever because I cry in my class, or I'm sensitive, or I get emotional. I don't care if you don't like me. I don't care. And so to be able to operate from that place and to operate from my heart, especially people on this call, like there's a lot of people on this call who are probably up in their head. Thanks, Peter. Up in their head because they work in the tech world or marketing. And so, like, what do I think about that? It's always a thinking thing. And what breathwork does is it switches that operating system from your head to your heart. And we need to move, I feel that we need to move more from our heart. We need to make choices more from our heart. And how does this feel in my heart? Because oftentimes when I make the choice in my head, it's not the right choice. And when I knew in my heart, you hear people say that, but I knew in my heart it wasn't right. Well, why didn't you listen to that?
Yeah.
Why didn't you listen to that heart voice? Right. And so we're not listening to that. And so listening to that more, trusting that more, maybe, but I think we're more online than ever. We're more disconnected than ever, unfortunately. And it's harder. It's more challenging. Personally, I miss, hugging people.
So yeah, I definitely have cried. And I once came out of breathwork class and I was like all teary eyed, and I was meeting someone and they asked me like if I was okay, what was wrong. Like, they're really concerned about me. And I was like, no, this is just what happens. Like, this is part of the deal. Like, you sign up for it and you got to let yourself release. And so, question for you, April, is, how is it with, like, kind of where we are now and things maybe opening up indefinitely, who knows when, or in small groups, not talking about policy at all, or lack thereof, but what's your thought about, like, the effect of this era on people being able to do things on their mobile phone? And is it making it more accessible? Because I grew up, my t-shirt says Des Moines, Iowa. That's where I grew up. It says Des Moines, French for Le Moynes. In Des Moines, Iowa, people don't have a lot of meditation studios. They don't have breath work places. They don't have people like Peter living in the city that can bring the headphones for brain massages. So do you think in some ways this has helped open up the practice, or do you think it's not?
Oh yeah, I mean, 200%, and in angel numbers, that'd be 222%. And I just want to say, like, I feel like I have a great example of this because I teach primarily in LA, but I have students all over the country for Reiki and who fly in normally to take my classes here. So for me to host a training that all of a sudden it became possible to do this and like the demand was really there this year, that was really exciting for me because it gets to say it saves everybody on plane tickets. Nobody wants to be on a plane right now anyway. And so it's really lovely to see the options opening up for everybody and for myself included in that. All my favorite teachers that I can never make their classes because I'm always teaching at that time or whatever, like they're now available on live stream, or I can just go to the Instagram live and rewatch it within 24 hours and take the yoga class for my teacher that I literally, can never make that time at her class. So I'm really excited about this. And Unplug has also been doing a lot. We're digital now primarily until the studio opens back up. So that's been feeling really good. And I'm personally loving it. I feel like everybody's sick of Zoom and I get it, but at the same time, it is still nice to see people. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I'd rather see people than not see people, at least
Y-
on even if it's on here.
Yeah, totally. And then we had Francesco says Tony Robbins cries in some of his seminars. I think it shows deep empathy for those one serves. April, you talked about heart versus ego. Yes. What did you mean by that?
Well, I was referring to John Paul's discussion on heart, and Peter, both of you mentioned heart coherence and getting out of when we're bouncing back and forth between the head that's talking to us and the heart that's feeling for us. And we can't decide what we're gonna like who to follow here. We just need to drop the whole ego entirely. Because if we're thinking about it too much and it's like there's something that keeps talking to us, that's your ego. It's all ego. And at the end of the day, it's like all our humanness is ego. So we're needing to do a lot of deconstructing, which also points me back to that conversation of breaking down, chipping away at the matrix that we're all in, and letting that crumble, and then coming back into our heart.
Well, Trish just asked, what are some ways to distinguish ego versus heart?
So Trish, that's like the best way I can tell you is what I've learned over the years. If something keeps nagging at me and I'm going back and forth like it's tick-tocking over here, then that is 100% my ego. Excuse me, transmuting energy. So when I am really feeling into something and I allow, my whole body will maybe even feel differently when I get a strong hit or download. I feel like I get like my body changes a little bit, like I feel into it. So there's going to be, as we're coming on more online with our feminine balance, because believe me, I have a ton of female clients. I know that's hard to believe for all of you, but I have a ton of female clients who aren't in touch with their feminine side because they're leading this, we're in a masculine society. So anyway, the reprogramming for that is something we are going to all have to feel into. And so that takes a while. I was born a feeler. I'm a crier and I'm a feeler, and I do that like naturally. So for me in life, the balance for me has been stepping more into like my masculine, like when I need to use that ego part to like really, okay, I need to make a business decision where I need to step forward on something. So it's a balance.
And so Francisco writes, I think he meant following your heart, like what it feels right, not what seems right or should be. And then Trish says, gotcha. I resonate with what you mean about the bouncing and nagging. Thanks. Yeah, Peter, what are your thoughts on just sort of like, your gut? I mean, because you could say like, like it's like better, right? When you talk about making choices and whether or not what you're doing is the right thing for your heart or not, you get overruled by your ego. So what are your thoughts about differentiating between the two or defining them?
Yeah, that's actually a really deep conversation because there are different definitions. We probably would have to really to go deeper to define what kind of ego we are talking about. There's the Freudian ego, which is actually a healthy part that we all need. And we all first need to build a healthy ego before we can let go of it. And until we have a strong ego, actually you really do want to have a healthy ego to say yes, like April said, I want to be able to say yes and no to the things that I feel, etc. So having a strong ego is like having a great car, like a really solid SUV that just gets you wherever you want to go. Four-wheel drive, great tires, gas in the tank. You want a strong ego. It's the vehicle we need in this 3D world. But where it gets tricky, if the unhealthy ego often is referred to the delusional mind. In Indian philosophy, we speak about avidya as the core evil, so to speak. Avidya is the opposite of vidya, of wisdom. So the non-wisdom, the ignorance, the ignorant mind that has a certain idea about reality, which actually doesn't match reality. And oftentimes the ego can be seen as the filter, as a kind of a contorted filter that you look into the world through your own lens. We talked about limiting beliefs. So that can come through trauma, just through being born as a human being. We all have these limiting beliefs. And then we look out into the world as a man who doesn't feel worthy and valuable, right? And the whole consequences from that, to be, let's say, a people pleaser, to be a procrastinator, to like define myself through work and trying to catch up on my self-worth through certain outside symbols, all of that can be categorized under the ego thinking, which is based on a false perception of reality. That there's something wrong with me, that something innately not lovable about me, that all is is part of that false ego identity. It's kind of an old operating system, or an old kind of a corrupted hard drive. So that is important to understand these sides, and it's very difficult. It's not easy to actually see that and to be honest and open about it. It's part of our, now we go really in the deep hole of shadow work. The shadow, by definition, is the part of ourselves that we are unable to see ourselves. Like the back of our head, we need a mirror, a third entity, and that's part of, we cannot see our own ego because we are so in it. It's like the fish in the water doesn't see the water because the water is so natural to the fish. So it does require deep, honest, difficult self-inquiry to understand the workings of the ego, and then to be able to more and more disidentify and to root oneself into that which is true.
Right.
And that's where meditation, all these practices come into place, to come home to who we already are, and then to kind of atrophy over time the influence of the ego, more see it as, okay, it's kind of a laughing version of myself that is making me very human, but I'm not identified, I'm not bound by that anymore. So it's kind of getting more and more free inside. It feels amazing to disidentify with the ego. It's like what John Paul said, this big laugh after breath work, this big liberation of the heavy weight that we didn't even know we were carrying.
Well, how does something like your future self meditation help you then? Like, because I mean, it's like I've done it and I like hugged my future self with your meditation, and I was like, oh my God, I love myself. And it was very simple. And like, I love myself in the future. And I just took it at very much face value. But I have to be missing something, or is that it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. So honestly, I don't really know what happens exactly in a future self-meditation. Just I know something is happening from the feedback that I get. So one way, and usually people see themselves when they meet their future self, it's a more evolved version of themselves. I don't want to use the word enlightened because that has baggage. It's just a more free version, someone who's already living the life of their dreams, and they're fully expressed. So future self is a way how we can see ourselves as we truly are, as we are capable of seeing ourselves. versus being trapped in this old version that is governed by limiting beliefs. So it's a glimpse into our potential. And the cleaner, the more inner work we have done, the cleaner our channels of perception are, the less we are corrupting it with the needs of the ego, the clearer the download is. And I would say someone like April, who I admire a lot, and I have received your Reiki a few times, I was blown away. Someone like April, who has done a lot of inner work, she would probably see her future self as almost like a divine being, like really like the embodiment of the divine feminine. I'm making a projection here, but the clearer you are in your inner work, the purer the channel will, the purer the information will be. And then you have something like an inner compass, something that you in a believable way, not like some bigger than life saint-like figure, but your fucking self, your beautiful, fully expressed self, living, being your beautiful being. That is usually what people see themselves. And then as a roadmap, how to get there. And then learning the deeper, darker inner shadow work, how to disentangle from
Actually,
the
we have a
old
question
thoughts.
here about how one can practice shadow work as endeavors one undertakes on their own. Does it require another person, like a therapist?
Yes, I would say shadow work is really, there are a lot of things we can do on our own, like tying our shoes, but there are other things we cannot do alone. And by definition of shadow is that something we are unaware about ourselves, it's our shadow. So we do need, the shadow may show up indirectly in, let's say, lots of failed relationships.
And can you
Or
define
like,
that again, what the shadow is?
okay, by definition is the shadow are parts of ourselves that we have pushed into the subconscious that we are not willing or not able to see, usually as a defense mechanism to manage pain, something that was too big to bear, so we bury it in our subconscious mind. Right? So we all sit on this like icebergs. We have these smiley Instagram faces on the outside like an iceberg, but underneath we all have this big unconscious mind, and that's where shadow material resides. And because it's unconscious, it actually rules the show because we don't have control over it. Right? So in order to get into this deeper, darker part of ourselves, to open the closet doors, we usually do need help, someone who can point things out that we cannot see ourselves.
Okay. Yeah, April
So,
says they're like blind spots.
thank you. But yeah.
So you recommend having a therapist or someone to help you?
Yeah, I would say shadow work is something that does take, I think, really a trained practitioner, especially if you have some deeper, darker, difficult parts in your biography. Someone with experience who can hold space for you, who doesn't get triggered in their own shadow, who doesn't freak out, who has also a track record of having helped a lot of people before. Very, very important, very helpful to seek professional help when it comes to shadow work.
Okay, that's great to know. And this is a good segue into John Paul. Mia asks, I'm hearing similarities between shadow work and breath work, releasing some deep-seated traumas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very similar. I mean,
Did he freeze? Are you guys there?
I'm here.
Did John Paul freeze?
Yeah, I
Okay.
see the
He was
same
about to
thing.
say something really profound. Like,
Yeah,
A really long, dramatic sigh.
it's such a deep pause that I'm waiting so much. It's like even his face right now. I'm gonna take a photo of this. I mean, he just looks like he's so profound. Trish is saying he's so deep.
He went so deep, he froze time. Time
That's
itself has stopped.
what you're saying. And Mia is really waiting for the suspense here. Keanu Reeves deep. Looks like he's gonna step back in a minute. A question for you both is: how do we make this stuff more popular? How do we make this stuff more regular so people that don't have to like have a breakdown or a crisis like I did you know, had to come to it. Like maybe that's part of it, but is there a way to make this more accessible and cool?
Peter, do you want to field that?
April, didn't you
Sure.
used to work in marketing?
Well, we used to work in marketing, but here's the thing. Like I'll toss it back to you, Peter, in a moment. But I will say, this is like a goal. I mean, if we knew that answer, it would already be installed. Believe me. I mean, a part of me wants to say, like, this is becoming more mainstream, and we're really hopeful. And through platforms like this one, we are able to reach a greater audience, and we have the means to do so. And I think that when you hear it from your friends too, like if it's worked for somebody that like we rely on that as teachers too, for you to share with your friends if it's something that's working for you and impacting your life, because it can really help someone in a big way or in a small way, and you won't know until you try it.
Okay, that's a good answer. I expect more from you. As I guess your marketing skills, you've retired those
I would
the
love
corporate marketing.
I would love to retire. When's that going to happen?
Yeah, Peter, you have any thoughts, like just on the journey of this becoming
Yeah, I mean,
more?
I could say so much to that. For one, Ryan, it's already becoming so popular. I mean, when I started 25 years ago to go on a 10-day meditation retreat, my father thought I had joined a cult and that he lost
Yeah,
his son to some kind of guru. Nowadays, if you go to a retreat, you're being looked, admired, and look at all the studies, look at corporate meditation. There's like Google, when Google builds a new campus, they build in meditation studios, in tech, wherever you go, even like conventional blue chip, corporate environments, they now have meditation programs. I mean, that's incredible how far we have come in a matter of how many years since meditation became on vogue? 6, 7, 8 years max.
yeah,
So
right.
extrapolate that. And with the apps, with the billion-dollar industry in the wellness space, I think we're just seeing an accelerated growth of more and more. It is already mainstream and it's becoming more and more so. Um, Secondly, I think a big shift, I think business is a big driver for innovation, obviously, and they're already catching up. So business is seeing that this is actually not just empirical, this is not just anecdotal advancement, there's actually measurable, empirical, measurable improvements in the performance of the workforce, of reducing, sick leave, etc. They're like hardcore data. So meditation, mindfulness is becoming more and more worked into our everyday lives. And so that just has its natural momentum. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I think we all feel that something inside of us that wants to wake up. Something is not fully expressed yet. And that's a desire that's just, it will get stronger and stronger, both through a positive motivation of just wanting to express ourselves more, and also through the pure dire need, through bigger and bigger crises or outside crises where we need all of a sudden, new tools to help us through.
Yeah,
So I'm a big optimist when it comes to that. It's a natural process. Business will be very helpful. Science will be very helpful, and just maybe more pandemics, crisis moments. For me, actually, when I finally dropped the hammer and said, "Okay, now I'm just gonna try to pursue my dream and to somehow be a healer." Had no idea what that means at the time. It took an ocean wave to kick me off my surfboard and break my shoulder. But the moment I was pulled off that beach in the stretcher, I knew, okay, now there's no more avoidance. Now I need to do what I want to do always. So sometimes we need these hard knocks in life.
yeah, that's cool. I like that story. I get it. So we have a couple more minutes. We're gonna wrap up. I want to see if anyone here. We've heard from Francisco, Mia, Trish. What about like Julie and Jennifer and Jen? There's some people I'm just calling you out because I see in the comments right here. Monica, like you've been here since the very beginning. Monique, I just want to make sure people leave with any questions they have if they've we're here to serve you all. Like if you have any tips you want answered, maybe about for your at-home practice, how to keep yourself balanced. One thing I found is that I'm probably meditating the same as I did when I used to go in person to studios. I found myself doing breath work though every night because I don't have to wait for the class. I can just do it on demand. I'm doing a lot more yoga on my own terms. So I'm finding time on my schedule. What about you all? Do you think that as people that you just use the term healer, like what do you call yourselves? Like is the healer term how you reference yourself to others, or like what do you mentioned you're a Reiki master, April? Like how do you describe like the noun of what you do?
There's lots of roles that we will play in our lifetime. We'll probably play just about all of them. And we are all our own healers. So when someone comes to me with the idea that they are going to be healed, yes, they're going to receive energy, but they are the ones that are healing themselves. So when we get into that rabbit hole, I'm not really one to be proclaiming I am a healer because I believe that that's something that's all innate within each one of us. So there's like, in the introductions, I try to give little snips of what I do, what I'm giving back so that you can identify that with something, relate to it with what you need. Oh, welcome back, John Paul.
Yeah, welcome back. You were like
The most
dramatically
dramatic
pausing.
pause in the world.
We've had the internet guy out 5 times now, and we were doing a podcast with these guys who have like a #1 hit on the radio, and my face was frozen, and my internet kept crapping out, and I was screaming obscenities at during the podcast, just losing my shit as like a breathwork teacher. And, that's the truth of the matter is like, I used to show up to the studio all the time and be like, listen, I just took the 101 to the 405 to the 10 and almost choked somebody out in the parking lot. But don't worry, I'm going to put gratitude and love in your heart in a few minutes. And so, there's no, what was it? Carl Jung said, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. My understanding of the shadow is a little lighter than Peter's, where it's like, I have a really bright light, but I have a really dark shadow too. I want to help people and fill their hearts with gratitude and love. And at the same time, sometimes I just want to fucking choke somebody out. Like, that's the truth of the matter. And to deny that I have that inside of me, to deny that that feeling isn't real, doesn't serve me in any way. Right. But I can go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and channel that feeling and do something positive with it. So it's about knowing that you feel certain things. For me, feeling certain things and acknowledging it and going, okay, what can I do with this? How can I channel this in a positive way? That's my understanding of the shadow self, to answer the question that was asked 10 minutes ago. Sorry.
Yeah. No, we've been waiting in anticipation for this after your dramatic pause. And Mia says thank you in the comments. I think she asked it with her smiley face. What about the question I just asked both of them, or I was asking them, is how does this stuff become more mainstream? And Peter thought that it was more mainstream, especially since when he started this journey. And what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think it's growing really fast, without a doubt. People are desperate for anything, especially right now with people struggling. I mean, I definitely attract people who would never do this type of work. And then, listen, I do all the woo-woo stuff. I just don't call it, I just change I'm like a translator, right? for like regular people who would never do it. I mean, I have a float tank. My wife stuck a crystal above it when I wasn't looking. I do all the woo-woo stuff, but it's definitely growing. I've been doing breathwork 8 years, and in the beginning, I couldn't beg my friends to come to my classes. I would beg them and be like, no, I'm not coming to your class. And now, they're like, would beg to get into my class because it would be sold out. And I'd be like, where were you 8 years ago when I tried to beg you to come to my class? And, you had no interest. And so people need help. We're all struggling in some way, in some area in our life, and desperate for any kind of solution. And so as these things grow, You know, I like Wim Hof has made breathwork more popular, and a rising tide floats all boats, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think it's growing really fast.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we're good timing. You got in right as we're going to wrap up.
Awesome.
So yeah, want to make sure you guys all give a shout out to your websites. April mentioned your book, if you want to mention that too, or plug it. And y'all want to like write even in the comments, like your domain or your Instagram where people can follow you.
Well, mine's really easy. I live in Santa Monica. I work in Santa Monica, and my business is Santa Monica Healing.
Okay,
Really
cool.
creative, stretching the boundaries there. So if you want to reach out, you can reach me on Instagram or my website or any electronic leash that I have attached to me. And I do have a cool book coming out on the 12 chakra system. So it's going to be mind blowing.
When's that coming out?
Well, I was supposed to have a launch party at Unplug. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that that's still, that we reopen by then, but like early September, first week.
Okay, cool. And you've written one other book on chakras already. That
2 books, but one is called Chakra Balance and one is Essential Chakra Meditation.
cool.
So, you know, if you like meditating and you like energy, then
Yeah, they're great books. My daughters have one of those books. My 6-year-old.
oh, they
3-year-old.
make excellent children's books. They're really good
Yeah.
for beginners.
They're great.
Yeah.
And then Peter, you just threw futureself.community, and then John Paul, you threw in a breathewithjp.com.
Yep. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all the social media stuff, and I do it all.
Everywhere. People are everywhere. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Any parting shots, goodbyes, hellos, shadow work you want to talk about?
Well, thank you, Ryan, for hosting and for bringing us all together. Really beautiful job. Well done.
Yeah,
Deep-
I'm
deep
the
gratitude.
student. You're the instructors. So hopefully,
We're also the students.
yeah.
Well, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So you got 3 teachers there.
Yeah. And maybe we can all do like we exit with the John Paul, the dramatic pause as we say goodbye on the freeze frame.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for coming. And then also people will be getting this on a replay that aren't showing up right now. So thank you everyone watching on demand, and take care. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trish. Thank you, Mercy. Thank you, Mia. Francisco. Awesome. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining. See ya, Peter, April.
Bye,
Bye,
Ryan.
April.
Bye,
Take it
Peter. It was so lovely doing this little chat tonight.
Let's do this
And
more
Peter,
often.
I just want to say really fast, your third ie, I could see your third eye turning into the sunset there for a minute, and
Yeah.
it was getting really trippy for me, and I love that. I like activation. Anyway, sorry.
It's a new Zoom plugin. It's a third eye plugin from Zoom. Get these effects.
Love
Next time I see you both, I'll be bringing my feminine energy. So that's
Yeah.
my one takeaway tonight.
You
I'm
do a
ready.
really great job of receiving and also allowing yourself to be in that healing space, Ryan. You're doing great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Love you both. Take it easy.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.